Ladies and gentlemen, brokers, agents, lenders, entrepreneurs, welcome to the show within the show. The inner game of real estate success. The show that gives you the tools to master your mind, close with confidence, and thrive in both business and life. I'm your host, Paul Salter. I'm a mindset and performance coach, and I use hypnosis to help my clients get out of their own way by dismantling the destructive patterns of thinking, feeling, believing, and behaving, keeping them stuck. If you feel like you're doing everything right, but still not getting the results you desire, you're in the right place. Join me on the last Thursday of each month to explore the mental and emotional patterns that hold even the top producers back. And more importantly, how to eliminate them for good. You'll learn how to overcome fear, perform under pressure, and avoid burnout so you can show up as your best self in every conversation, deal, and day. Without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome back. This is the third installment of the inner game of real estate success, and I'm thrilled that you're tuning in. And today's conversation will serve as a phenomenal standalone, but I need to encourage you to get the most out of today's conversation, to go back and listen to the episode published on June 26th, because that is a conversation that deep dives into the topic known as the upper limit problem, or also known as fear of success. That conversation is going to provide you with an incredible framework and foundation to get every single nugget and ounce of value out of today's conversation. And the way I'd like to begin today's conversation is with a story. And I want you to begin to imagine for a moment and really just begin to listen to see what elements, what characteristics, what aspects of this story resonate with you. This story is about a client of mine. A client of mine is the oldest of four. And he is the oldest of four, two parents, one of which came from immigrant parents. Her parents, his mother's parents, came over when they were 7 or 8 years old from Eastern Europe. And her entire upbringing, there was always enough money to go around to take care of her needs as well as her two sisters' needs. Yet dad was always working, always working. Dad, on the other hand, this client's dad, was one of eight. And as you can imagine, his mother, my client's grandmother, became a brilliant mind at mastering the skill of pinching pennies. One of the most creative ways she indulged her mind each week was finding an opportunity to see how long and how far she could stretch tuna casserole until her husband's paycheck came in and she could buy another round of groceries that would hopefully last the week to feed all eight children. My point is this: my client's parents always had their needs met, yet money was tight. Both of their respective fathers had a tenacious work ethic, always working. And this is especially true in his dad's side because his mother was a nurse for a couple of years into his upbringing, but eventually had to leave that job to stay at home full time to, as you can imagine, raise eight kids. Well, we fast forward when my client's parents met, fell in love, got married, the whole shebang, happily ever after, which, hey, they've been married 35 plus years, if I recall correctly. And that's incredible. Dad took a job. All he had known since early high school until his early 20s was construction, building houses, fixing things, and understanding that that was not a viable option, a sustainable option for the future him and his wife wanted. He took a sales job, a 100% commission-based sales job. And for the next 30 years, he worked at, excelled at that job. it remained 100% commission based all 30 years, where he ultimately went on to raise four wonderful children, including my client, the oldest of those four. And in my client's words, reflecting back, his needs were met. A good majority of his wants were met and satisfied. Yet there was always an undercurrent of scarcity and anxiety around money. There were many moments he recalled in which his parents said yes when he asked for things he wanted, but equally, if not more, moments in which they said no. And there were a couple particular moments in hindsight, specifically the dot-com burst of 2000, the housing market crash and recession of '07, '08 into '09ish, in which, upon reflection, my client looks back and he could just feel the palpable tension, lack, scarcity, anxiety, fear related to money or lack thereof. There were countless years of his upbringing when his dad was up at 4 a.m., home at 6 p.m., and a couple times a week might have went back into the office to work and get shit done. And one of his dad's mantras was always, "I'll sleep when I'm dead." Phenomenal work ethic, ambitious, tenacious, committed, relentless. The picture I'm attempting to paint for you is that there was a generational pattern of scarcity, lack around money. The only known solution being, if I want to earn more, I have to work more. This client's father watched his father relentlessly work to feed 8 mouths. My client's father embodied that, tirelessly worked in the pursuit of being able to provide his four children and to create a wonderful life. As you can imagine, the generational characteristics and relationship with money were passed down to my client. And my client, fortunately or unfortunately, was bitten by the entrepreneurial bug quite young. He was mowing yards, selling things on the sidewalk from a very young age, had his own lawn care company business throughout high school, got into the personal training realm, became a personal trainer, a group fitness instructor, ultimately a coach, and then has been in the coaching, consulting, and speaking industry for a very long time. When he officially left his last corporate stop to go all in on his side hustle, for 5 years in a row, he made the exact same amount of money. For 5 consecutive years in a row, the number of hours he averaged per week of work went from 40-ish to 50-ish to 60, 65, 70 hours per week on average at its peak. Throughout this 5-year process, he pivoted multiple times in terms of who his ideal demographic, target audience, and niche were. He read the books, he took the courses, he attended the events, he invested handsomely in multiple so-called business coaches and gurus. He wrote books, he built online courses, he created communities. He kept doing more and more and more in hopes that his income would finally break through some arbitrary ceiling or threshold, and he'd finally feel that elusive sense of peace, happiness, and contentment. He operated with the belief that the harder I work, the more I will make. The more happiness and peace I will feel, the less anxiety, tension, and fear I will experience. But as I shared again, 5 consecutive years, the only thing that increased was the amount of stress, anxiety, and number of hours he worked as well as the exhaustion. The things that decrease were the amount of sleep, the quality of his marriage, the quality of his well being, the quality of his relationship with money, friends, and family. And oh, by the way, the income more or less never moved for 5 consecutive years, plus or minus the same $10,000 at the end of the year. And it really begged the question, why was he doing all of this? What was the cost? Was it worth it? My client had taken the same pattern of emotions, stress and anxiety. My client had taken the same learned beliefs. I need to work more to earn more, then I'll be happy. That had been passed down from generation to generation. And he replicated that almost to a T for 5 consecutive years. His entrepreneurship journey, again, marked by a plateau in income with increasing levels of stress, fear, anxiety, poor self care, poor relationships, his marriage ultimately crumbling, ending in divorce. And all of this, A, learned, passed on generationally, but B, all of this forming what I now refer to as the origin of destructive mindset programs. These patterns of thinking, feeling, believing, and behaving that are deployed by our subconscious mind, designed to keep us safe. Remember, your subconscious has one primary goal: to keep you safe. The way that it keeps you safe is keeping you stuck in patterns and experiences of familiarity, predictability, and certainty. So you might be wondering, how, for my client, did remaining stuck at that particular income threshold for 5 years keep him safe? How did it benefit him? Well, here's where we bring in another layer of complexity. Given as human beings, our subconscious has one primary objective, again, to keep us safe. That means, as a result, all of us human beings have three core fears: fear of judgment, abandonment, and rejection. And that's because centuries ago, if you were judged, rejected, and ultimately abandoned by your tribe, you either starved to death or you were eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. And although the literal threat of judgment, rejection, abandonment isn't an actual threat to our well being, life, or death in maybe 99.9% of circumstances today, the visceral fear experience is as real and prominent, as palpable as ever before. So here's where things get interesting. My client, as I mentioned, had been bitten by the entrepreneurial bug from a very young age. He had all these grand aspirations to make a ton of money. His set sight on crossing that 7-figure per year threshold. He's doing all the things. He's writing books, creating courses, hiring coaches, paid advertising, social media, you name it. He probably tried it in some way, shape, or form. He's got these big aspirations, but it felt like he kept running into an invisible wall, a glass ceiling, as if this invisible gravitational like force was creating a form of resistance, holding him back, because there was an underlying belief that it wasn't safe to scale his income to the next level. And this could be an entire conversation in of itself, but the key point I want to get to is that safety, or that lack thereof, was rooted in a fear of judgment, rejection, and abandonment from his parents, specifically from his father. My client observed for 3 decades his father work his ass off, 12, 14, 16, even 18-hour days, all to provide for his siblings, his mom, that family, all to provide what my client ultimately described as a wonderful childhood and upbringing with opportunities. How dare my client reach a point where he earns more money than his dad? That's so disrespectful. How dare my client go work for himself, doing something he loves. Not that his dad didn't love what he did, but then in a significantly shorter amount of time, start making significantly more money. How dare he? There was such an existential threat to creating tension, resentment, rejection, judgment, and abandonment between my client and the relationship he had with his dad that he found himself stuck in a pattern of sneaky, quiet subconscious self-sabotage until he did the work necessary to dismantle that pattern. Now, here's where things become eerie. My client told me that the income amount he made and was stuck at for those 5 years was almost identical to the cumulative income his dad and mom made each year. He still has a vivid memory of seeing the amount of money his dad made when filling out a FAFSA form for college aid when he was preparing to go off to college. And he could roughly estimate based on his mom's industry what she earned in a given year. And if you add those numbers together, that is where my client remains stuck for those 5 consecutive years. And it wasn't until he identified this collection of destructive mindset programs that you're going to become privy to and have a much deeper understanding of by the end of today's conversation that alongside his own mindset and performance coach, he was able to break the cycle, dismantle the patterns, soar above that threshold while simultaneously working less and experiencing significantly more peace, fulfillment, presence, joy, contentment, and exponentially increasing the quality of his life. And you may wonder, how do I have such an intimate knowing and understanding of this experience? Because the client I described is myself. That was my story. For 5 years, held back by the weight of outdated beliefs and behaviors, emotional reactions that weren't even mine, but they were all I knew. Feeling as if I was running into a brick wall, banging my head against the wall year after year for 5 consecutive years, wondering what the fuck do I need to do to ever change my results? And as I alluded to, it wasn't until I hired my own mindset coach that I was able to see this more clearly than ever before. And then do the work, take the action necessary to break free. And that's what we're going to learn more about in today's conversation. So if you're still with me, buckle up because you're in for a journey. You're in for 15 to 18 more minutes of probably feeling like you're going to be drinking through a garden hose. That's okay because you can go back and re-listen to this. And what I really want to do is tie in a little bit of the key points from last episode, all about the upper limit problem, use that as a springboard to talk about destructive mindset programs. And I'll do that by beginning with a few simple questions. You, the listener, do you know, do you feel, do you believe that you're capable of selling and earning more? Do you know what to do to sell, scale, and earn more? Yeah, I thought so. And if you truly don't, you can quickly fill those knowledge gaps from another episode on this podcast, Google, or all of our beloved best friends, ChatGPT. But the point is this: you don't have a lack of information problem. You have a mindset problem. And if you recall from last episode, the way that I talked about this upper limit problem is using the analogy of a thermostat. So again, briefly, imagine for a moment that your success, your happiness, your income are the temperature of your thermostat, of your home, and your internal beliefs, your self-worth are the thermostat that controls it. Anytime the temperature in your home rises above where you have it set on your thermostat, the AC kicks on and cools things back off. The same occurs Anytime you suddenly find yourself rising above the amount of love, success, happiness, or money that you deep down believe you are deserving of, you will unconsciously begin to cool yourself off. And again, this is known as the upper limit problem. It's a psychological phenomenon that describes the unconscious experience of feeling that there's a limit to how much money, success, happiness, or love you can achieve. And this thermostat represents your internal beliefs about how much success, happiness, and wealth you deserve. And the upper limit problem sounds and looks fairly similar for a lot of people. It might sound like, oh, if I keep making this much money, I'm going to burn out, lose my friends, lose freedom. Wait a second. I'm not the kind of person who makes 50,000 a month, six figures a month. Wait a second, if I grow too fast, I won't be able to keep up. Everything will fall apart. Was this last month just luck? I can't expect to repeat that, can I? If I get too successful, people will resent me or they'll think I've changed. Sound familiar? So, as I alluded to earlier, your subconscious has one objective, and that is to keep you safe. And anytime you begin to step outside of your comfort zone, you rise above that internal thermostat setting, your subconscious deploys destructive mindset programs to bring you back to safety, to cool you back off. And a destructive mindset program is an unconscious collection of emotions, beliefs, and behaviors that serve as pre-programmed reactions to particular triggers. And a destructive mindset program is designed, again, to keep you safe. And it does so by creating a familiar, predictable cascade of events that keep you trapped in this endless cycle of 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. Fortunately, and there are countless types of destructive mindset programs, and we're going to go through some examples. But every single one has the same constituent parts. A triggering situation arises. A flood of emotional energy begins to permeate into your beliefs, your self-talk, behaviors, which ultimately shapes your results and creates your identity. So we're going to take a few minutes and go through each of those constituent parts: trigger, emotions, beliefs, word choice, behaviors. So let's be very clear here. Life demands you navigate an emotional battlefield that is rich in both seen and unseen triggers. It's not a question of if you'll encounter these triggers, but when. So, a couple common triggers you might relate to include approaching a new financial milestone or level of success, growing your team, experiencing rejection or a setback, having public visibility or the pressure to perform, hearing about one of your team members, partners, or colleagues hitting another milestone of success, experiencing an unexpected change or loss of control. These are all potentially triggering situations. And this triggering situation triggers an emotional experience. Emotions are pre-programmed, unconscious reactions to circumstances, people, or environments. They are learned energetic feeling states that become familiar. As I shared with my own personal study or story, anxiety, stress, and fear related to money were learned, and they became a part of what's known as my core emotional home. The emotions I was so accustomed to experiencing that they, in a weird, sick, twisted way, really in an irrational way, because that's how your subconscious is, anxiety, stress, fear felt comfortable, felt familiar. And as a result, I continue to find ways to get my fix of those emotions. Important to note about the word emotion. The Latin derivative of the word emotion is simply energy in motion. So when you feel that tightness, that tension, that heaviness, that butterfly-like sensation, it's just energy moving throughout your body. Yet, When you lack the emotional intelligence and the complementary tools to process and express this energy, this emotion, it becomes trapped. And as Sigmund Freud said, unexpressed or trapped emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways. It's like a pressure valve. Inevitably, it will burst if that pressure does not reduce. And I'm a walking testimonial. My marriage imploded because I was unable to break free from these patterns. That was that pressure valve moment. So, what are some of the destructive emotional experiences? Again, emotion on its own is not destructive unless you invite in that emotion to take the steering wheel of your life and to be in charge of all of the decisions and actions. But some of the potential destructive emotions can include fear, frustration, anger, anxiety, disappointment, shame, regret, doubt, impatience, and even overconfidence. And all of these emotions may be experienced quite differently depending on the individual, but you might experience one or more of those emotions as tightness in your body, tension, knots, butterflies, pins and needles, warmth, a heat, a heaviness, a stiffness, a rigidity. So we know triggering situations arise, an emotion is triggered. That emotion then begins to affect our beliefs, or what beliefs begin to then serve as the filter through which we make decisions and take actions. So I like to talk about beliefs as the lens through which you see the world. They help to facilitate predictability and safety in your life, and they serve as a filter for your decisions and actions. Every single one of us has four core beliefs. We have a belief about ourselves, others, life, and money. And this is probably a podcast conversation all in on its own for a future one, but I want to talk briefly about this. You have three core beliefs about yourself: what you're worthy, what you're deserving, and what you're capable of. You will never, ever, never, ever rise above that. Period. You can talk about how much you want to earn millions of dollars every year, but if deep down you don't believe you're worth more than 500,000 a year, you will never make more than that. Period. Your life experiences also dictate whether or not you trust others and whether or not it's safe to see the best in others, whether you view life as fair or unfair, and whether there's always or never enough money. What makes this situation about your belief system interesting and can make it feel as if it's an uphill, never-ending battle is that researchers estimate 95% of your belief system is formed before the age of 7. So the current set of beliefs you possess may not be yours. Yet, you're the only person who can do something about that. So common limiting beliefs that might resonate. I'm not cut out to be a top producer. I don't deserve to make that much money. I need to struggle to prove that I've earned it. It's too much competition. I'll never stand out. The market's saturated. I'm not good at sales. I'm not a natural closer. I'm not tech savvy enough to keep up. Success means sacrificing time with family and peace of mind. Any of those sound familiar? They hitting you in the feels? You noticing some of that emotional energy swirling throughout your body? So I use that specific analogy. A belief is like a filter, a lens through which you begin to make decisions and take action. Your belief has a direct impact on the words you use to speak to and about yourself. And I want you to listen closely when I talk about this. There's an inherent energy, a magic, if you will, in your word choice. And I'm not trying to get all Harry Potter on you, but I need you to hear me when I say it's not a coincidence that the construction of words is referred to as spelling. You see what I'm saying? Words have the power, the potential, the magic to cast a spell on your energy, actions, results, identity, and reality. And words are the individual building blocks of your mental sentences, which really is just another way to say your thoughts. So interestingly enough, it's estimated you have between 50 and 70,000 thoughts per day. Roughly 80 to 90% are negative, and roughly 80 to 90% are the same as yesterday. Fortunately, you have the free will and the power to choose which thoughts you hold on to and give more time, energy, and attention. So as we continue downstream, there's a trigger, an emotion. It basically dictates what lens or belief is going to come up. That belief then influences the words we use, our thoughts, which then dictate the actions we take. And when I'm talking about actions, specifically behaviors, I'm addressing self-sabotaging behaviors. Again, these are destructive mindset programs after all. So there's an element of sabotage, of course. So I like to talk about sabotaging behaviors by breaking them down into two categories: capital S and lowercase s sabotaging behaviors. Capital S sabotaging behaviors are the obvious behaviors you're aware of that are sabotaging your success. They're the behaviors that if anybody were to see, hear, or read about would instantly say, oh, no shit, of course you're sabotaging yourself. So this could include drinking excessively to unwind or celebrate, avoiding follow-up calls or client conversations, withdrawing after a deal falls through or a client backs out, binge watching or scrolling social media during work hours, skipping coaching calls, ignoring advice, neglecting financial awareness and management, or turning to food, gambling, or overspending to cope with emotional stress. Lowercase s sabotaging behaviors, on the other hand, are the not so obvious, often overlooked behaviors you're unaware of. On their own, seems like no big deal. It's a one off, not that bad. These are quiet, sneaky forms of self sabotage that seem harmless in the moment, but they erode performance, confidence, and momentum over time. Examples include hitting the snooze button and starting your day in reaction mode, skipping morning routines, meditation, or planning, not posting or promoting yourself consistently because of not feeling ready, or might I add, thinking you're good enough, downplaying wins, procrastinating on uncomfortable tasks, comparing yourself to others, avoiding CRM cleanup, or following up with lukewarm leads. Any of those sound familiar? Capital S, lowercase s, sabotage? So let's put it all together now. Again, the constituent parts of a destructive mindset program include a trigger, an emotion, a belief, words, action, and a result. These programs are deployed by your subconscious mind to keep you safe, to keep you stuck in a pattern of familiarity, predictability, and certainty. So I want to run you through a couple of these that are incredibly prominent that I have a hunch are probably quite relatable. So this first program, also known as fear of success. The trigger is you suddenly realize you're on track for your highest grossing month or year ever. And suddenly that triggers fear, doubt, anxiety. The belief is, I'm not ready for this much growth. I'm not deserving. And that spirals into, what if I can't keep this up? I don't want this pressure. Am I an imposter? Do I deserve this? And this leads into delaying follow up, avoiding closing leads, making careless mistakes. And then you fall short and justify these subpar results as circumstantial. Another one, fear of rejection. It's time to follow up with a past lead or to ask for a referral. Triggers anxiety, dread, discomfort. And the belief is, well, if they say no, it means I failed. They don't like me. I'm not good enough. So you start to craft these sneaky excuses and justifications. They probably forget about me. Or I don't want to be annoying. And the action is you avoid outreach or you delay contact, and then ultimately you lose the opportunity and you diminish your pipeline. Imposter syndrome. Let's say, for example, you land a high end listing or close a major loan. Immediately you feel insecure, fearful, uneasy. Suddenly you believe, I'm not qualified to be here. Ooh, I don't deserve this. And you start talking to yourself, and it sounds like, ooh, I'm going to be found out. They're going to realize I don't actually know what I'm doing. I'm not qualified. I don't have enough experience, the right experience. So you over explain yourself. You second guess your decisions. You pull back, underperform, and miss opportunities. One of my personal programs I had to work so hard to overcome was the relationship between money and success. Suddenly, let's say, for example, a commission check clears or a big month is on the horizon. You're tense, you're fearful, you feel overwhelmed. Money always comes with pressure, is the belief you're operating from. More deals means more fires to put out, more people to impress, more conversations. And suddenly you begin to unconsciously slow down, cool things down, or overcomplicate deals. And your momentum suddenly flatlines after a big win. Let's do one more. Let's say you have this inherent need to be liked, to fit in. It's called being human. It's just more prominent and stronger in some of us compared to others. In an example situation, imagine for a moment you're ready to assert higher standards, raise your rates, or to niche down, go after your new target market, but you feel a sense of insecurity, a fear of disconnection and guilt. Maybe you're contemplating leaving your team and going off on your own, but you start to tell yourself, well, if I make bold moves, people will think I'm arrogant. I don't want to make other people feel uncomfortable. And suddenly you're so far more concerned with other people than your original goal and the fire you once had to go off on your own to take this bold action. You start to undercharge, over deliver, avoid boundaries, and you play small. You dim your light and you're stuck with feelings of burnout, resentment, and a lot less money than you possibly could have had in your bank account. So it's my hope that some of those resonated with you, because the exciting news after what probably felt like a bit of a grim conversation thus far is that these destructive mindset programs are learned, which means they can be unlearned. And one of the most practical first lines of action you can take after you're having this profound awareness is just starting to get curious, getting incredibly curious about what your destructive mindset programs are, the patterns of thinking, feeling, believing, and behaving. How are they holding you back? How are they making you feel? What are they protecting you from? How are they helping you? They are helping you. They're keeping you safe, protecting you from something. And once you get some clarity around this, start to break down your destructive mindset program. Identify the sabotaging behaviors that promote safety. Identify the negative, harsh, overly critical self talk. Identify the beliefs you have about yourself, others, life, real estate, and money. And start poking holes in these beliefs. Start practicing emotional awareness and emotional resiliency practices, meditation, journaling, breath work, having a strong, consistent fitness regimen, developing a meditation practice. And this is a wonderful starting point. And of course, I'm biased. I'm a big believer that asking for help accelerates results. Asking for help alleviates anxiety. Action alleviates anxiety. If you want to accelerate the dismantling of your destructive mindset programs, mindset and performance coaching, specifically hypnotherapy, is a fast, effective solution. And it's the reason that I've been able to help countless business owners, executives, entrepreneurs get unstuck, get out of their own way, and achieve their potential. And if you're truly committed to becoming the best version of you, breaking through your upper limit problem, dismantling the destructive mindset programs, keeping you stuck in this never ending cycle of 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, well, I invite you to schedule a mindset coaching discovery call with me. The link is in the show notes. I look forward to hearing from you and connecting with you there. And as we wrap up this conversation, I want to first, again, thank you for tuning in the last Thursday of every single month, the inner game of real estate. This is the content nobody is talking about. This is the content between your ears you need to address, confront, take ownership of. This is where the separation resides. Everybody can get their hands on the education. Everybody can cold call. Everybody can learn how to sell to an extent. But if you're not taking command and ownership of what's taking place in your inner experience between your ears, you're missing an invaluable opportunity to smash the competition, rise above, and achieve all of your goals and dreams. And I want that for you. I want that for you. If you found today's episode helpful, share it with a fellow real estate agent, broker, lender, entrepreneur, or friend who needs to understand how they are continuing to sabotage themselves and also understand there is hope to unlearn those patterns to become the best version of themselves. Thank you again for tuning in to the inner game of real estate success. Again, if this episode shifted your mindset, gave you a new perspective, share it. And if you're ready to go deeper and eliminate what's holding you back once and for all, visit the link in the show notes to schedule a mindset coaching discovery call with me. Until next time, keep showing up, stay grounded, and remember, your greatest edge is the one between your ears.